Introduction to Visual Art. This week is the week of our midterm exam. You do not have to watch a lecture, a normal lecture, but what I am going to do is review the content and the answers of the 4 exercises that were assigned to you last week. These 4 exercises were assigned so that you could study for your midterm exam. I wanted to make sure that all of the students in the class have a good concept of all of the terminology in the class. So, without further ado, let's get started with the review of exercise 1 from last week. In exercise 1, we were looking at a painting, a large painting by the artist Jeff Koons called Girl with Dolphin and Monkey, Triple Popeye. The first question was, locate one psychological line, explain where it is in the painting. My answer, and believe me, there are other psychological lines in this painting, but my answer is the easy one, which in my opinion is there's a connection between the girl's eyes and mouth and the monkey's face. So I see a psychological line between the face and the face. Psychological lines, by definition, are lines that we are, as viewers, are able to draw because psychologically we are drawn to those lines or to relationships. Question 2. What types of objects does the artist employ? Are they organic, geometric, non-objective? Explain. My answer. There are organic shapes in the artwork, such as in the human form and in the man-made objects such as the balloon animals, which are made of curvilinear and lifelike lines. There are also many squiggles and patches of color. These can be described as non-objective. It's not uncommon for an artist to use multiple types of shapes, and you can be able to describe those shapes differently. Describe the color pattern of the painting. Describe the colors used, how they relate to each other, and how it is organized on the canvas. There are many flesh tones evident in the 3 Popeyes and the woman on the dolphin. There are organic browns and greens in the background of the image, which contrast squiggles of cool grays and blues that are in the foreground. The blue and gray squiggles appear mostly at the top and bottom of the canvas. Central in the image are 3 Popeyes and 1 woman riding a dolphin. These forms are mostly flesh tones that contrast with dark black elements of clothing. So the pattern refers specifically to how the artwork is organized. Where is the color in the artwork? What icons does the artist use in the painting? Well, first there's Popeye with spinach. There's also inflatable animals and a woman dressed in like a 1940s pinup girl. The cartoon icon of Popeye eating spinach is ripped from popular culture and what would have been familiar to the viewer when they were children, referencing nostalgia for a future vision of adulthood. The inflatable animals also represent youth or childhood. The woman, though, appears to represent a truly false but symbolic view of ideal sexuality. Together, Popeye and the woman as a pinup girl must represent false ideals of gender identity and culture, possibly as seen from the perspective of youth. Now, I know that was sort of a excellent or very in-depth answer. I don't expect all of your answers to be as in-depth as what this was, but just understand that every single object in the world around us, especially those objects that are in paintings, are loaded with cultural baggage. The objects mean or represent something in addition or something else. What is the cultural baggage that comes with the icon? What could the icon represent? Is the composition unified or varied? Explain. Although there is a recurring pattern of Popeye 3 times, the artwork as a whole is exceptionally varied. It is varied in the nature of objects within the artwork, but also in a variety of color and different and unexpected shapes, forms, and colors. In other words, yes, there is a pattern, but the only pattern I see is the 3 Popeyes. Everything else is unexpected, meaning the shapes, the objects painted, things like that relate to something that you could describe as varied. On to exercise number 2. We have a painting by Francis Bacon called Study for Portrait 7, painted in 1953. Locate one implied line. Explain where it is in the painting. Let's review. What is an implied line? An implied line is essentially a line, but it's a line of, say, dots or dashes. It's a line that's been broken. Sometimes you'll see implied lines in, say, window panes going down a building. They're all in a straight line. They're all lined up with each other. That would be an implied line. So I wrote, moving up one arm over the shoulders and down the other arm of the figure is an implied line. It is implied because it is broken, dashed line, but we see it as continuous. So this is what I'm talking about. Going up one arm over the shoulder and down the other. There are other implied lines, being maybe this chair thing that he's sitting in. All the other lines, the white and the gold lines, those are actual lines. Describe the value pattern of the painting. Describe the values used, how they relate to each other, and how it is organized on the canvas. Again, we are talking about the artwork as a whole, the entire artwork. Where are the values? Overall, the painting is very dark, where the majority of the background is nearly black. There's a figure in the center of the painting that has a relatively high contrast to the dark background. The blues in the figure range from a medium-high value on the body to a face that is nearly white. Gold lines move across the canvas, and these lines too are of contrast to the black background and have a value that is closer to white than gray. Now, I've come across answers in people's quizzes that describe value in terms of color. I want to iterate this again. Value is not color. Value is levels of black to white. In my description, I described levels of black to white, but I indicated the value of blue. I did not talk about how bright the blue is, how saturated it is. I talked specifically about how much black or white is in the blue. how much black or white is in the face. That is value, and that is value pattern. Question 3. Is the texture actual, implied, subversive, or any combination thereof? Where are the textures and what meaning, significance, or emotion do they carry? I find this painting to be very spooky because of the subversive texture used by the artist. Texture is mostly in the face and on the chest of the form. It looks both granular and transparent, as though it allows us to see through the brush strokes. Okay, let's review actual, implied, and subversive texture. Actual texture would be a sculpture. It would be any object in real life. It would be the desk or your laptop. That is actual texture because you can actually touch it and feel a texture with your fingers. Implied texture is the depiction of texture. So if I were to touch the canvas with my fingers, I wouldn't feel any texture. The texture on the canvas is in fact implied. However, implied texture is not in my answer, but subversive texture in a painting is often implied. So I could have said it is implied and subversive. Subversive texture is texture that is gross or leaves you feeling icky, or is meant to evoke an emotion, specifically a negative emotion. Because I wrote, I find this painting to be very spooky, this is me explaining an emotion and how I feel when I look at the painting. That is subversive. Describe implied motion in the artwork. Through the action of the brush strokes, it appears as though the figure is either quickly appearing or quickly fading away. The image seems impermanent and is as though we are viewing a snapshot in time. My argument with my understanding of this painting is that we're looking at something like a ghost, and the ghost is doing something. It's somewhere between visible and not visible. I'm attributing that to motion, implied motion. However, if you were to make an argument that it is not moving, that's fair, as long as I can follow your logic. Question 5 would be, what is the focal point of the painting? The focal point appears to be the figure's face. I am drawn to it for 2 reasons. First, in a relatively dark painting, it is the point of highest contrast. Second, the drawn perspective and angles of the gold and black lines draw my eyes to the same vicinity. So, over here, the face is of highest contrast. That is one of the methods of producing a focal point. Highest contrast. And then these lines, they don't necessarily point at the face. This one goes sort of behind it. But it all seems to frame out where the face is. All of these lines direct me towards that vicinity. I would call that the focal point. All right, next artwork. This is an artwork made of 3 photographs by the artist Ai Weiwei, and it's called Dropping a Han Dynasty Urn. First question. Describe elements of balance and symmetry in the work. The artwork is composed of 3 similar photographs that are also of the same size and shape. Together they have a horizontal balance because each half is about the same. That's a very, again, this answer is straight to the point. There are potentially other answers that would work as long as you can back it up. Horizontal balance again, I am envisioning a line that goes down the center of the body in the picture, in the middle picture, and then these images on the left and on the right, and even left side and right side of his body. They're not the same, they're not symmetrical, but they are balanced because it's a similar weight. Do these 3 photographs suggest implied motion or implied time? Explain. Because of the properties of gravity, the image in the center definitely has implied motion. The urn really looks like it is in the act of falling. Together, the 3 images tell a story in 3 stages: before, during, and after. Therefore, what it looks like I didn't type in. Therefore, the 3 images together create implied time. So it's a mix of both. Describe the subject matter in these 3 photographs. Is there any iconography? The 3 images are of the same person photographed in similar positions 3 times. The person is of Chinese or Southeast Asian ancestry, and through a progression of the 3 images, he goes from holding an ancient urn to dropping it on the ground. There's definite iconography in the ancient urn that implies cultural heritage and value. The reason why I spoke of the race or the apparent race of the man is because I'm trying to draw a connection between his nationality or ethnic origin and the Han Dynasty urn. What do you think is the time and place in which this artwork was made? The time the images were taken appears to be midday, judging by the lighting in the image, and according to the text was in about 1995. The place is outdoors on pavement, maybe in an alley or at the side of a building. Question 5. What is your interpretation of this artwork? This is my answer. You can have other answers because it is your interpretation. As long as the interpretation is thoughtful and well argued, you will receive points. It is valid. What I wrote: the 3 photographs show a man, possibly a person of Chinese descent, dropping an ancient Chinese urn onto pavement. The act of dropping the urn seems representative of a disregard for and the destruction of Chinese culture. I interpret this artwork as the artist making a deliberate attempt to separate himself from a traditionally Chinese society. Again, that is how I interpret the artwork. Let's move on to exercise 4. I do want to say that I think this is a fun artwork. I like it because of the optical illusion that you see. If you stare at that dot in the middle, and then close your eyes, you see an imprint of the American flag inside your eyes. That's interesting because the colors are obviously inverted. So orange is opposite of blue on the color wheel, green is opposite of red, and black is opposite of white. I like this painting for that reason. So we're looking at, it's not actually a painting, it's a print of a painting. It's okay if you said painting. Okay, we're looking at an artwork made by Jasper Johns called Moratorium, 1969. Describe iconography in the artwork. What design elements do you see? This artwork is composed nearly entirely of an American flag made in green, orange, and black. Each of the colors in the flag are opposite of red, white, and blue on the colors of the color wheel. There are brush strokes visible in the inverted flag that show camouflage-like texture. Along the bottom of the artwork is stenciled the word moratorium, which means a temporary stop to an action. Lastly, there is a small circle in the middle of the flag that looks like a hole. That hole is about the size of a bullet hole. That, if you wrote something like that, that is an excellent description of iconography. Describe the color pattern of the painting. Why do you think the artist used the colors that they did? I wrote, the inverted flag is painted with very dark blacks and saturated greens and oranges. Perhaps the inverse of the American flag can represent the opposite of American culture or ideas. Again, this is my opinion, but again, it's my guess. This is what I think is the reason why the artist used the colors that they did. 3. Describe the state of the world, local, national, international, as well as location and events that might help to understand the artwork, considering the date it was made. I do say, it is okay to look up current events when researching artwork. Sometimes you look at an old painting or a sculpture and it looks very provocative. Well, what would bring the artist to do that? Like, what was happening at the time? If you did a little bit of research, you'd understand that 1969 was the height of the Vietnam War. It was also in the era of the Civil Rights Movement. In the 1960s, JFK was assassinated, and so was Martin Luther King and other political and civil rights leaders. Being made in 1969, it was the end of a decade of violence and divisiveness. If you are asked to write what is going on in that time, in a time period in which an artwork was made, maybe you would be asked that question in the midterm exam. A paragraph like this is short, it's concise, and it really tells the story as it relates to the artwork. What does moratorium mean? Why would he add that word to the artwork? I put this question on here not because I expect you to know the definition of moratorium. I want you to use your resources to figure out questions like this. If you see something written across a painting and you want to understand what it means, look it up. Just Google it. You have a dictionary in your pocket when you Google words. So that's exactly what I did. Moratorium is defined as a temporary prohibition of activity. My guess is that the artist was demanding an end to violence of the decade, but also an end to the Vietnam War. Briefly describe your interpretation of the artwork. This is my opinion. That's what your interpretation means. The artwork is about demanding an end to violence and the Vietnam War. I see this through the camouflage texture of paint and the use of an inverted flag and the word moratorium. So that is the review for the exercises, and that is essentially the review for your upcoming midterm exam. Now, I just so happen to have the midterm exam pulled up right now. You'll be talking about this artwork called Better Homes, Better Gardens by the artist Kerry James Marshall, painted in 1994, acrylic and collage on unstretched canvas, 100 inches by 142 inches. So 100 inches is 8 feet 4 inches tall, and then 142 inches is 12 feet long. So just over 8 feet tall and 12 feet long, about. So this is a large painting. You'll find in the folder for this week, and the folder, there's a link that ties the assignment for this week with where you'll be turning in your midterm exam essay and where you'll be finding this handout. Let's go over the handout. So this midterm exam essay is 20% of your final grade. I'm assigning it today, September 28th, 2020. I extended the deadline because I think that some of you might need a little bit more time to write this paper. I extended it by 3 days. It is now due Wednesday, the 7th of October, 2020 by 11:59 p.m. Description of the assignment. This midterm exam essay is a short 2 to 4 page paper that is a formal analysis and interpretation of the painting Better Homes, Better Gardens by the artist Kerry James Marshall. In this essay, you are to consider all the definitions you have learned thus far and apply them to describing the artwork. You are also asked to give an interpretation of the artwork and provide a personal judgment on it. Below is a potential outline for your essay. You will receive points for touching on each element in the outline. You do not have to follow the outline specifically, but you are required to cover all the content in it. Be thoughtful and concise. Do not ramble, and choose words that get your point across efficiently and effectively. Good luck. Alright, so the outline. And it's totally okay for you to follow this outline just right off the bat. You need to write an introduction. I don't have a structure for the introduction. Just come up with something. You've written introductions before. I want you to write a visual description. So, style and technique. Describe the shapes. Describe the value and color patterns. Describe iconography and what they might represent. Describe the subject matter in this painting. That would be objects, forms, the people, time, and place. Visual analysis. Explain how the design elements make you feel. Speculate on why the subject matter and different techniques were used. Describe current events of 1994 and how they relate to subjects in the painting. For example, what would it have been like to be black and in America in 1994? What were the events leading up to this painting? Speculate on the setting of the painting. What place does it depict? I want you to interpret the painting for yourself and in your own words. So, consider the description of the objects, consider your analysis of the objects, and write a paragraph or 2 or 3 that really describe what this painting is about. Then lastly, I want you to finish this up with your judgment. Do you like or dislike the artwork? Tell me why. Is the artwork effective in conveying a message, and how? Describe elements of the artwork that are particularly effective and or ineffective. What is the artist, or what does the artwork do well? What does it not do so well? If you think that the artwork is about one thing and it's not quite making its point, well, talk about that too. Again, this is your midterm exam essay, and it is 20% of your final grade. I've given you a 3-day extension. It is now due on October 7th by 11:59 p.m. I think you can do this. Just take all of the questions that I've asked you and string them together into a nice, cohesive 2 to 4 page paper. And then that'll be an easy 20% for your grade. Good luck.